You want answers? This video gives you something better. A trail that explains why answers keep dying out here. We're counting 20 mysteries from most solvable to least, each showing one thing. Canada's size isn't scenery, it's a machine that grinds evidence down. Expect clinical, then uncanny. A note that says all well before the march south. A bruise that won't pick a story. A road that builds memorials faster than arrests. Keep watching, because every step down the list turns the volume up on the one voice you can't subpoena: the land. So go ahead, dim the lights, let the world fall quiet and settle in. Because what you're about to hear isn't just strange, it's true. And if mysteries like this are your kind of thing, consider subscribing. Now, let's start where the records are clear and end where the land starts answering back. A single sheet pulled from a stone pile says, "All well." It names 2 ships held in the ice and gives neat coordinates. After that, 129 men fade into white. The note sits cold and tidy while everything else comes apart. They set off strong in 1845. HMS Erebus and HMS Terror were bomb vessels turned explorers. Iron reinforced, steam added, holds packed with years of food. Command believed Peel Sound and the channels ahead would yield a clean line through the Arctic. Confidence was a supply they carried in bulk. The ships pressed into ice that felt seasonal, a barrier that would loosen with summer. It didn't. They froze in place off King William Island by September 1846, according to that same note. Searchers later found 3 graves on Beechy Island from the first winter, and then the Victory Point note under a cairn on King William Island. The first message, dated 1847, still sounded steady. The amendment in April 1848 changed the tone. Sir John Franklin was dead as of June 11, 1847. The ships had been locked fast for more than a year and a half. Captain Francis Crozier and James Fitzjames ordered abandonment. Teams aimed for the back river. Optimism was replaced by numbers, dates, positions, head counts. The paper told you what, not why. Inuit accounts gathered later spoke of gaunt men dragging boats over ice, gear scattered along shorelines, and relics traded or found near camps. Stories placed human remains at places later called Washington Bay and Starvation Cove. Modern work adds layers. Diets low in fresh food meant scurvy risk. Tinned provisions and ship systems bring in lead exposure questions. Enclosed spaces and stoves suggest carbon monoxide as a threat. None of these alone explains the end. Together they wear crews down. Then the water gave up 2 answers with more problems. In 2014, searchers found Erebus in Wilmot and Crampton Bay. In 2016, Terror appeared in Terror Bay, startlingly intact. Hatches shut, plates on shelves. It looked like a plan to winter and wait that never cashed out. Ice drift helps square the wreck sites with the note's positions. The pack can move whole hulls like they are leaves, turning them into slow traps that carry men away from escape routes while seeming still. On land, investigators found bones with cut marks. The debate about cannibalism changed shape at that moment. The pattern matched survival cuts on limbs, not animal bites. It was grim, and it matched the rest. Choices made under a clock you cannot see. You can read the logs up to a point. After that, you follow footprints that stop and bones that remain. The Arctic keeps what it wants. It preserves uniforms and ink and even soft tissue, then slides a meter of new ice over the one thing you need next. We have the wrecks. We have the note. The cause matrix, disease, cold, starvation, decisions, won't settle into one box. Out here, the landscape held the last word, and it still does. From imperial planning to a single bruise on a painter's temple a continent away. An overturned canoe drifted near Canoe Lake's shore, barely rocking on calm water. When they brought it in, the paint looked scuffed, but nothing obvious told the story. Days later, Tom Thomson surfaced. The lake gave him back with a 4-inch bruise on his right temple that didn't explain itself, and a length of fishing line knotted around his body that only raised more questions. On July 8, 1917, he left Mowat Lodge like he had so many times before. He knew these waters. Friends watched him load his gear with the casual rhythm of a man at home in a canoe. He pushed off alone. The weather looked steady. He wore a cap and a sweater, his paddle steady as he slipped past the point. That was the last ordinary moment. When he didn't return, people started scanning the shoreline and listening for any call across the water that never came. His body came up days later. The line tangled around him suggested he had been fishing. The wound on his head didn't fit neatly with a simple fall. Some said the canoe could tip easily. Others said Thomson was too skilled to drown by mistake, and the bruise pointed to another hand. The talk split fast. Accident, suicide, or murder. Each theory felt like it explained something and left something out. Rumors rolled through the small circle at the lake. One story said he argued with a local man on the dock in the days before. Another pointed to a woman said to be pregnant, with all the pressure and anger that might bring in a tight community. His burial came quickly, which did not help trust. Officials moved to close the matter, but the speed and the loose ends fed doubt instead of easing it. Years added more fuel. In 1956, an exhumation claim said the grave in the local cemetery held someone else, not Thomson. Then in 2010, a skull assessment reignited the question of whose bones were where. Each new piece carried expert language and then fell into dispute. The names on the reports shifted as much as the identifications. The only solid object that seemed to pull people back was that bruise on the temple. The bruise is the emotional center of the story. A paddle strike would look like that. So would a fall against a thwart if he went over. It refuses to pick a lane. The lake answered the search with a body at the surface, but it left the reason under it, where no one could pull it out and show it to a jury. His paintings hold the same bays and skies that watched him go under. The brushwork is restless water, blown pines, a sky that can tighten without warning. It makes the loop tighter. He painted the place that may have taken him, and people now stare at those canvases looking for a clue that probably isn't there. An accident remains the most likely path, given his history of tipping a canoe and fishing alone. But that wound never closes. It keeps space open for doubt. From a lake's secret to a hole in the earth that refuses to empty. You dig straight down and the ground answers in layers. First, a platform of logs, then another. Old tools show up where no one should be working, and when the shovel hits a third tier, water surges up like a living thing. Pumps roar, the pit rises anyway, and the hole you made fights back as if it's wired. For more than 200 years, crews have crossed to Oak Island chasing the same promise. They follow stories of pirate gold and a carved stone that once sat in a shop window, said to carry a cipher about treasure buried below. The map lines and family tales point to one spot locals called the Money Pit. Men sink shafts beside it, widen the main hole, and build platforms and cribbing to get past trouble layers. They keep going because each foot down pays with a clue that says go deeper. The island answers by flooding them out. Diggers carve coffer dams, drive sheet piles, and set up steam pumps. The water drops for an hour, then a tunnel gives way and everything collapses again. Every fix triggers a new failure. The legend grows with the damage. 7 must die before the secret is given. People start counting. When another accident happens, the story adds a notch and keeps score like the island is keeping it too. Investors bring money and fame. Engineers cut new access shafts and try triangulated digs. They chase the stone that reportedly warned of treasure below, looking for the exact line where it was pulled years earlier. The stone moves through hands, the translation changes, and the target zone inches around the map like a moving dot. Crews lower cameras, hit voids, and see shadows they argue about for months. In the 1990s, a team from Woods Hole ran dye tests to see where the water came from. The color bled into the shoreline, pointing to natural channels, not clever man-made siphons. Geologists talk about karst, limestone riddled with voids, sinkholes, and underground plumbing. The pit might not be a device at all. It might be a place where the ground behaves like a machine. Still, people find coconut fiber far below the sod and lengths of old chain in the muck. Coconut does not grow in Nova Scotia, so the mind goes back to ships and crews hauling cargo. Are those layers a filter bed or just packing washed in and trapped? The artifacts say someone worked here. They do not agree on why. Maps, surveys, invoices, and hand-drawn cross-sections stack up in archives. The whole answers by swallowing proof. Tunnels cave, markers move, and every winter resets the surface. After 2 centuries, the best working theory is that Oak Island wears a sinkhole like a vault door. There may be no treasure, only human traces laid over a natural trap that mimics design. From a hole that fills with seawater to a road that never fills with answers. Along Highway 16, the roadside signs look like warnings until you get close and see names, faces, and dates. For 725 kilometers between Prince George and Prince Rupert, the markers double as memorials and the ditches hold stories that never reached an end. Since the 1970s, families along this stretch have reported daughters, sisters, and mothers who left home and did not come back. Most were indigenous. Communities are spread far apart. Many homes sit miles from any town. If you don't have a car, you wait, or you walk, or you stick out your thumb and hope the next ride is safe. Work, school, appointments, everything depends on getting between places that were not built with transit in mind. That gap turns into a loop. Few buses, fewer cabs. Winter shuts down the shoulder and shortens daylight. People still have to move, so they hitchhike. A person disappears on a short run to the next stop, and the search window opens late because she was expected to stay with friends or make a long round trip. Reports get filed, but scenes cool fast on a highway lined by forest and pulled over by weather. The RCMP set up Project EPANA to look at linked cases. They set criteria: victims last seen or found within a set distance of certain highways, with specific timelines and factors. Teams pulled thousands of interviews, gathered DNA where they had it, and tried to connect offenders to multiple files. They filled binders, logged tips, and followed trucks and cars through miles of road footage when they could get it. There were some breaks. Forensic links tied an Oregon man, Bobby Jack Fowler, to one victim. He died in prison before more charges could land. Another case connected to Gary Handlin years later. But most files did not touch those names, and most remained open. The scale is the problem. The road is long, and time keeps moving. The detail that sinks in is small. A ride that should have been 20 minutes becomes the last confirmed sighting. A friend remembers the jacket. A clerk remembers a bus ticket that was never used. That tiny anchor is all a family has to hold on to while the rest of the record thins out. Paper doesn't carry scent or tire heat. It stacks up in boxes. The land erases faster. Snow covers tracks. Rain washes shoulder dust. The next logging truck throws grit across anything a tech might have seen. Distances turn a scene into a line of mile markers and guesswork. People gathered at symposiums and meetings and pointed to fixes. More buses, more phones, better lighting, safe houses, alerts that move faster across jurisdictions. Those proposals show why this keeps happening. It's not random. It's routes with no services, poverty-pressing choices, and a road that eats time from investigators. Some changes came. A transit line runs parts of the route now, with more stops and lower fares. But the map still wins. The emptiness between towns still decides who can get help and how soon. From a highway's emptiness to a suburban house filled with a trap. A fake couple walks in with you. The door clicks shut. The house is quiet, staged, and still. You have a name on your calendar and a number that won't exist by morning. Nothing else makes sense. In 2008, a woman called a Saanich realtor and asked for a showing at a high-end home. She spoke with an accent. She said her husband would join. She wanted privacy and speed. The number she used belonged to a disposable phone that had been activated days earlier and would be tossed after. The listing was desirable, new, and empty. It was the kind of place where footsteps echo. The appointment landed in the late afternoon, just long enough for neighbors to be home but not watching. Witnesses saw a tall man and a blonde woman meet the agent at the door and go inside. That view through a window is the last normal image. Minutes later, there was no struggle heard, no call for help that carried. When people finally entered, nothing was stolen. Drawers were not ransacked, and the scene did not give up a fingerprint that mattered. DNA didn't speak either. Whoever planned this wiped what they could and left before anyone knew a crime had happened. The timeline reads like a rehearsal. The caller used decoy texts to keep control of the schedule. The burner phone pinged from Vancouver when it first lit up, then moved, then went dark. The pair arrived tight to the appointment time. The agent's phone activity stopped when she met them. A friend waited outside briefly, saw nothing wrong, and left. The window between arrival and escape is narrow, the kind that only works if everyone hits their marks. Investigators said on record that they cleared the most obvious suspect lanes around her partner and his circle as primary actors. That pushed the focus to planning. The profile that emerges looks organized, patient, and informed. The caller knew the house, knew the agent's routine, and knew enough about the business to request a private showing with details that sounded legitimate. It reads like inside knowledge without proving the source. Inside, the violence was sharp and personal. The wounds showed anger, the layout showed control, a kill carried out fast with no sexual assault and no theft, inside a home selected for location and silence. It points to a message or a grudge, delivered without leaving a signature. And then the trail ends. Phones go dark, cameras miss faces or catch only cars that cannot be tied. A short city street becomes as empty as tundra. Neighbors recall a shape, a coat, a color of hair. None of that lifts the case. The house itself worked like a micro-environment. It had sight lines, blind corners, and a lock that turned the world off. The wilderness erases footprints with wind. Drywall and bleach do it with time. Forensic tech keeps improving and brings in tips, but no charges land. The plan did exactly what it was built to do, from a staged room to a beach where a man won't say his name. A man with both legs cleanly amputated lay on the stones at Sandy Cove and would not speak his name. His stumps were healed, wrapped, and cut in a way that looked deliberate, not rough. Villagers came down to the beach in 1863 and found him watching them, silent. He pointed to his mouth when he was hungry, to a bed when he was tired, and to nothing when they asked where he came from. They carried him into the village and tried to learn who he was. He answered with gestures only. No language seemed to reach him. Some said he understood tone. Others said he was deaf to everything but food and rest. He moved between houses as families took turns. Later, a small government stipend helped pay for his care. It was just enough to keep him in a spare room with a view of the road and the shore. He stayed for years, aging in place, known by a single name people gave him, Jerome. With time came stories. If he would not speak, others would speak for him. Some said a captain put him ashore to die. Others said a crew took his legs as punishment after a mutiny. A few pointed to his features and called them Mediterranean. They thought of southern ports, warmer water, and ships that crossed far from Nova Scotia. Nothing proved any of it. One idea reached print much later. A 2008 book by Fraser Mooney Jr., Jerome, Solving the Mystery of Nova Scotia's Silent Castaway, proposed that Jerome was Italian, called Gambi, who lost his legs to frostbite after falling into a mill pond in New Brunswick, and that a schooner captain abandoned him at Sandy Cove. That account drew criticism for lacking a firm factual base. It added pieces, names, places, a chain of events, but the links did not hold under hard checks. What did hold were the legs themselves. The cuts were even. The healing was clean. That kind of result points to a surgeon's hand, likely on a ship with proper tools and time to manage blood loss and infection. It did not look like a dockside hack job. That detail stands as the anchor in a sea of guesses. Records are thin. Newspaper clippings are brief and repeat each other. The burial accounts conflict. Later plaques mark debated graves, and visitors stand at more than one spot that claims him. The paper trail fades, and the talk grows. People pass his story down at kitchen tables and in small museums. Each telling bends a little around what the teller thinks he sees in Jerome's face. He became a mirror. The village looked at him and projected a past the land would not confirm. He stayed silent and stubborn, and that made the story stronger. The shore kept the secret it delivered. No matter how many times people asked, the answer never changed. He was found. He was cared for. He died without a name. From an unnamed man to a named encounter that burned a witness. A man staggers out of the trees near Falcon Lake with a grid burned into his chest. The marks are spaced like someone pressed a hot metal grate against him. He says he got close to something that had a door, and when it opened, the heat pushed him back and took his breath. It was May 1967. Stefan Michalak, a Polish-born mechanic and hobby prospector, hiked into the bush to look for quartz and silver. He heard a high-pitched whine and saw two discs settle onto a rock outcrop not far from the water. One lifted off and shot away, the other stayed. He watched it for a while, thinking aircraft, maybe experimental, maybe in trouble. Curiosity won over caution. He walked closer to see if someone needed help. As he approached, the air smelled like sulfur and hot electronics. He saw a seamless hull with curved panels and light leaking from seams. He noted a door-like opening and a grate pattern inside. He called out. No answer. When he touched the surface, his glove melted. The craft rotated. A blast of hot exhaust hit him square in the chest and knocked him to the ground. He vomited and his head rang. He felt weak and dizzy. When he steadied himself and stumbled back to the highway, the skin on his torso began to blister in neat squares. Doctors treated him for burns and later for nausea, headaches, and weight loss. The symptoms came in waves over months. The pattern on his skin faded, then reappeared after exertion or stress, which baffled clinicians. He repeated the same account to police, to federal agencies, and to skeptical interviewers. The details stayed fixed. The smell, the sound, the door, the grid. Officials took him seriously enough to open files. Canadian authorities recorded statements, visited the site, and collected samples. Investigators found an oval clearing with scorched moss and metallic traces that did not match simple campfire residue. Soil and rock tests flagged anomalies. The case drew wider attention, including review by teams cataloging unusual aerial reports at the time. Medical notes documented the burns and ongoing illness. The file stack grew, not with rumors, but with lab slips and clinic forms. That grid on his chest sits at the center of everything. If the source was mechanical, it suggests a patterned vent or exhaust. If it was medical, it suggests a reaction triggered in squares for a reason no one could find. Either way, it is the image people return to, because it is the one thing independent eyes confirmed. Skeptics point to hoax, misidentification, or self-inflicted injury. The problem is motive and method. Michalak did not chase fame. He lost work time and peace. He guided officials back to the spot more than once, and did not profit. The physical evidence muddies easy answers without handing over a clean one. So the case sits, fully documented and still undecided. The forest offers a burned patch and nothing that moves. The best file in the country on a UFO story keeps its core question open. From one unknown visitor to two unknown children with no voice. Two small skulls lay under a pile of brush beside a woman's coat and a small hatchet. Workers clearing ground in Vancouver's Stanley Park in 1953 stopped, stared, and then pulled back more debris. They found bones arranged close together, wrapped in what looked like an old blanket. The tools and clothing were child-sized or for someone caring for children. The moment felt wrong in a place filled with joggers, families, and tourists. Police marked off the spot and started digging. The remains belonged to two young children. They had been hidden well enough that trail users walked past them for years. The park is busy even in winter. Paths weave through trees within sight of the city, but the crime drew no witnesses. No one remembered screams or a fight. No one noticed anyone dragging a bundle off the path. The forest held them until the brush crew happened to cut in at just the right angle. For decades, no names came. Flyers went out to schools and churches. Officers checked missing child reports and asked hospitals and social agencies for matches. Nothing fit. Forensic tools at the time could not pull age and ancestry with precision. Dental charts were incomplete or missing. The bones were fragile. Early efforts leaned on estimates, sketches, and a few photographs, and each one carried wide error bars. Leads fizzled. The city grew up around the case as it stalled. The details on the ground never stopped pulling at investigators. The blanket suggested someone familiar, someone who would wrap children gently before carrying them. The compact hatchet, scaled to smaller hands, raised the possibility that it belonged to the children or to a caretaker. The coat, a woman's size, added another layer of closeness. These were not random items tossed in a hurry. They looked chosen. They looked like planning. Across the years, forensic missteps cost time. Early testing risked contamination. Storage conditions shifted as the case file moved buildings. New analysts came in with better methods but had to work around old gaps. Bits of hair and bone that could have helped were either gone or degraded. Each generation did what it could, but the toolbox stayed a step behind the questions. Modern DNA finally changed the shape of the file. Genetic genealogy linked the remains to a family tree and identified the boys as brothers. Living relatives learned that branches on their tree ended in the park. The news hit hard. Family lines now connect faces in old photographs to the children found in the brush, and people who never knew they were missing someone now carry that loss. The killer remains unknown. The park kept no footprints, and the years erased whatever scene once existed. The case proves what the land can do to a story. It hid them for years, and then returned only bones. Identities are restored, but justice is still missing, from a city forest to a blizzard trail drawn in a straight line to death. Four trained Mounties walk into the snow and leave a map of mistakes on the ice. Their plan looks solid on paper. Follow the winter trail, haul mail, check on cabins and posts, and return before the worst cold locks everything in. The north answers with -40, flat light, and miles that don't forgive small errors. It is 1910. The patrol sets out on a 500-mile route through Yukon's hardest season. They move with dogs, sleds, and enough rations for the timetable they expect. The trail should lead through a pass in the Richardson Mountains, then down toward Fort McPherson. When the sky closes and the wind lifts ground snow into a sheet, every hill looks like every other hill. A wrong turn in that weather doesn't feel big in the moment. It becomes the whole story later. They miss the pass and burn days trying to correct. The rations thin. Dogs slow and start to fail. The patrol cuts portions and pushes into headwinds that take the heat right out of a person. They swing back toward where they think safety is. Their tracks loop on the same white field. A blizzard erases everything behind them and hides everything ahead. It's a fatal circle written where no one can read it until spring. When the relief party moves out, the scene they find is tight and grim. Bodies lie along the trail, close together, within 56 kilometers of Fort McPherson. The dogs did not make it. The food is gone. Gear sits where it was dropped, some of it lined up in the order you would expect from men who still did the job even as they failed. The mail is still with them, a small bundle of letters from Herschel Island and from Fort McPherson. It is a stubborn detail in a field of loss. The research threads are clear where they exist. Diaries and recovered notebooks mark distances and days. The last entry in Inspector Fitzgerald's diary is dated February 5th. After that, the page stays blank. Autopsy notes and reports use plain words: exhaustion, exposure, starvation. The paper record is steady, but it stops when they do. The land keeps moving. That last entry works as the emotional anchor. He is still writing routes, still tallying progress, still managing a plan that the weather has already taken apart. The words look calm. The body that wrote them was running out of heat. We talk about training and grit like they can buy down risk. Out here, competence isn't a shield against no horizon and cold you can't breathe deep into your lungs. If you miss the pass, you pay with days. If you pay with days, you pay with body weight, then with judgment, then with life. They are memorialized now as a warning. The Dempster Highway today follows the route they should have taken. It runs like a marker over their intent. The white abyss still waits for anyone who thinks a strong plan beats a bad sky, from a broken patrol to a leader blown apart in a rail car. A rail car shatters in the night, windows gone, wood splintered, and with it, a community loses the man they called their guide. The train had taken a mountain curve in British Columbia when the blast punched through a single coach. Flames lit the rock face, then faded to smoke, rolling along the Kettle Valley line. It was October 1924. Peter Veregin, the Doukhobor leader, sat with companions after a long day of travel. He was a pacifist, a planner, and the head of a group that farmed, built schools, and tried to live apart from state force. The explosion killed him and several nearby passengers. The railcar ended up a broken box on the tracks with a hole where his seat had been. Crews cleared wreckage by lantern. Officials moved in with clipboards and questions. Right away, the talk split. Was it an accident from the lamp or stove? Was it a bomb placed under the seat, wired to the motion of the train? Or was it sabotage tied to land fights and angry factions? Veregin had admirers and critics inside his movement and outside it. His decisions about property, leadership, and obedience had created tension that did not stay behind meeting hall doors. The political pressure around the Doukhobors was real. Land titles and communal living put them at odds with officials. Their refusal of military service drew attention. Files were opened. Surveillance followed them across towns and fields. The community faced internal divisions over faith and control, and outside groups pushed them to conform. That mix gave investigators many lanes to consider, and none that settled fast. Investigations looked at fragments pulled from the coach and at damage patterns around the blast. Some reports said explosive residue could not be ruled out. Others leaned back toward an onboard accident. Nothing went far enough to name a source. Inquiries closed without charges. Families took the body home and buried their leader while the case stayed open in everything but name. The seat where Veregin sat became the center of speculation. Wreck crews pointed to it. Witnesses later told interviewers that the force seemed to come from beneath him. That single location turned into the focus of every theory. If you believe in a bomb, it is the anchor. If you believe in a tragic malfunction, it is still the starting point. Witness statements drifted as time passed. Some heard a sharp crack, others described a dull thud, night travel, echoes on rock, and panic scramble memory. The mountain corridor took smoke and metal fragments down into gullies. Snow later covered whatever small clue lay a few yards off the ballast. The case lives where belief meets power. A pacifist's death by violent means invites enemies into the frame, and the file never cleared them out. Theories even reached south, where fears from groups in Oregon added noise to an already tense landscape. No culprit was named. The line reopened. Trains kept rolling past the crater, from a skylight entry to a museum emptied by ropes and nerve. 3 guards lay face down on the floor with their hands tied, alarms disabled for renovations, and a jagged opening in the skylight spread above them where names like Rembrandt and Delacroix used to hang nearby on the walls. The thieves came in from the roof, dropped a line, and moved fast in the quiet hours. When staff raised the alarm, the room was empty and the frames were bare. It happened in September 1972 at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. The crew entered through the skylight, over a section where security had been softened because construction was underway. They climbed down, surprised the guards, and forced them to the ground. Then they walked the galleries and took 50 works, including old masters, a careful selection that fit into a plan more than a smash and grab. They left the same way they came. No one outside heard more than a few bumps from the roof. What followed was a long, strange conversation with ghosts. Calls came in with ransom offers. Drop-offs were staged and monitored. Negotiations reached and broke on details and proof of life for paintings. Each contact felt like a near miss. After a few attempts, the callers went silent. Months turned into years. No museum visitor anywhere recognized a piece on a new wall. No insurer got a tip worth the payout. None of the 50 works resurfaced. Theories grew where the evidence stalled. Some suspected help from inside. Knowledge of the renovation schedule, the guard shifts, the blind spots left by scaffolds. Others looked south and east and said private buyers across the border would hide the most valuable works in warehouses or homes. One painting once thought to be by Bruegel later turned out to be misattributed, a twist that undercut a minor lead and added to the fog. It did not reduce the loss, it just changed a line on a list. The case files, still closed to the public because the investigation remains open, point to method. The thieves knew what to take and what to leave. They went for pieces that could move in the black market and that could be carried down a rope without tearing. Their exit was clean enough that the first hours yielded little beyond the obvious. The night comes down to simple human marks: a rope burn on a guard's wrist, tape residue on a mouth, and an empty space where a frame had rested. Police made sketches. The museum built inventories with photos and measurements. Those records are clear and careful. The problem is what happens next. Art can vanish into private walls, free ports, or storage containers for decades. The paper trail ends at the skylight. The canvas trail breaks at a van door. Canada's biggest art theft removed more than money. It cut a gap in a public collection that no budget can repair. Tips flare up, then cool. The city still looks up at that ceiling pane and wonders who walked across it and where the paintings are now. From missing paintings to a missing teenager in broad daylight. Security cameras catch her at almost every turn, but they never show where she went. You watch a loop of a teenager moving through a bus terminal, and the last frame you get is a door closing behind her. It's April 2016. 16-year-old Michaela Bali walks into a Saskatchewan bus terminal with a backpack and phone. She paces, makes calls, and sends messages. She steps outside and back inside more than once, like she's checking for someone who hasn't arrived yet. She buys lunch, sits by herself, and eats quietly. The footage shows normal moments that feel heavy in hindsight. After that, she is gone. Her phone becomes the first problem. Pings and logs you expect to clarify a path turn vague. Social media that usually leaves a trail becomes noise, with messages that don't add up to a plan. Friends and strangers reach out with tips. Some say they saw her at another station in another province, or days later at a restaurant. Each one forces a new check. Most collapse. A few linger, but none rise to confirmation. No camera shows her boarding a bus. No rideshare driver remembers a pickup. Staff and travelers in the terminal remember a polite, quiet girl waiting, and then they remember nothing useful after that. Theories bloom and wilt. Runaway, meeting someone older, lured into a car, trafficking. Each idea explains one detail and breaks on the next. If she left by a hidden door, someone opened it. If she walked out front, a camera should have seen it. The record refuses to join. Investigators release a detailed video timeline. They map her steps by minute and location inside the terminal and nearby blocks. It is a tight walkthrough that proves how little can be learned from so much footage. Her family keeps the case alive with fundraisers and interviews, adding faces and dates to an appeal that never stops. In 2017, her disappearance is highlighted on International Missing Children's Day. In 2019, a television feature titled Still Searching: The Disappearance of Michaela Bali wins awards and brings the story to more people. Coverage on video sharing sites grows, and the inbox fills again. The small things hold the most weight. A receipt for a simple lunch sits in the file, time, amount, and a stamp. It's the last calm proof of life that isn't in pixels. You can hold it, you can read the ink. It can't tell you who she waited for. The cameras end at the terminal doors. Beyond them, the prairies begin. Wide streets, train tracks, lots, and highway lanes that stretch out of town. Ordinary movement looks staged when you know the ending. Her walking, her checking the clock, her circling back. It reads like she was keeping time with someone else's schedule. The case stays open. Billboards go up. Age-progressed images try to keep pace with birthdays. People still call in with what they think they saw, from a terminal's cameras to a valley that warns people not to enter. Camps look normal. A gold pan sits with water still beating on its rim. Packs are zipped. No signs of a bear raid or a fight. Then you see what's missing. The bodies are there, but the heads are gone. In the early 1900s, that was the story drifting out of the Nahanni, a deep-cut valley in the Northwest Territories where prospectors walked in and didn't walk out whole. Men followed rumors of coarse gold along the South Nahanni River and its side canyons. Trails were thin. Weather swung hard from heat to cold. Some camps turned up intact, with tools oiled and bedrolls tight and a corpse laid out nearby, decapitated. Supplies told one story: no rush, no theft. The remains told another that no one could square with a clean motive. Wolves don't unlace boots. Grizzlies don't carry heads off and leave gear. Word moved fast between cabins and posts. Reports of headless finds and burned cabins piled up. Some said human raiders. Others said something older guarded the valley and punished trespass. Dean elders had warned outsiders to stay clear of certain gorges. The Nahanni's geography backed that caution. Karst canyons cut like saw teeth, caves open underfoot. Hot springs steam in winter where everything else freezes, and that heat draws animals and people into odd patterns. Modern attention changed the map, but not the core feeling. When Parks Canada set up the Nahanni National Park Reserve in 1976, researchers logged climate data, wildlife movement, and the karst formations that honeycomb the area. Studies offered rational pieces: rockfall, river undercuts, predators cleaning a body long after death. They helped explain some scenes and could not touch others. As one summary notes, the persistence of unexplained details continues to fuel speculation, a reminder that the file is bigger than any single discipline. The picture that endures is small and simple. An abandoned camp with coffee still on the fire, a pan half full as if someone stepped away. That domestic calm beside a mutilated body fixes the legend. You can build charts about weather and rock. That one image is the thing people carry out. On paper, the historical cases are fewer than the legend suggests. Embellishment likely stretched timelines, doubled reports, and tied unconnected deaths into one curse. Coroner notes, when they exist, are brief and cautious. Distance, cold, and spring floods block recoveries. Investigators can barely get back to a site once the thaw comes. The land controls the evidence. The Nahanni's reputation now does its own work. Prospectors turn back because of stories as much as cliffs. Pilots avoid low passes if the wind is wrong. The idea of a cursed valley keeps people out, which leaves fewer eyes to correct or confirm the next report. So the myth grows from a core of true deaths in a deadly place. Some details bend, some are solid. The headless men remain the warning on the river. From headless legends to a manhunt where the quarry outlasts the map. One unknown man outruns planes, dogs, and winter. He moves like the weather is his ally. He leaves almost nothing behind except tracks that never line up with the plan set against him. In 1931, a man called Albert Johnson built a cabin near the Rat River. He kept to himself. When Mounties went to question him about trapline tampering, he answered with gunfire through the wall. That single choice lit a 40-day chase across the Yukon and Northwest Territories at the worst time of year. He fought off officers at close range, slipped cordons, and turned blizzards into cover. Every time the line closed, he broke it. He moved like a veteran of the land. He set deadfalls near his camp approaches. He laid false trails over hard wind crust and stepped back into his own prints. At night, he climbed ridges in deep cold to shake pursuit and cut across passes that most people avoided even in daylight. He crossed rivers where the ice was thin enough to scare a careful person, then kept moving before the water froze over his tracks. He rationed fire, burned green wood to hide smoke, and cached food where a casual search would miss it. The chase changed when a pilot joined. Wap May took to the air and began scanning for the one thing dogs and skis could not read from the ground: pattern. From above, he found the small turns and slants that pointed to a route, then guided the teams in. It took several attempts. Snow erased lines overnight. Finally, the officers caught Johnson on the Peel River. The final exchange of gunfire left him down on the ice. They took his body, his few possessions, and the questions he never answered. The questions grew with the tests. In 2007, isotopic analysis of his teeth suggested he may have grown up in Scandinavia or the U.S. Midwest. In 2021, DNA work traced his ancestors to Sweden. The RCMP had once sent his post-mortem photographs across Canada and the United States, hoping someone would give him a name. No match came back. Suspects proposed over the years were ruled out by DNA. The man at the center stayed a blank. Small details show how prepared he was. His snowshoes were modified with extra cross pieces and a tight weave to ride on wind slab instead of punching through. The bindings were adjusted to let him side hill and pivot fast. He trimmed gear to what could be carried at a run. He cut weight from his rifle kit and split matches into multiple caches. Those choices kept him ahead longer than most trappers could hold out. In the end, the file holds mugshots in death and no verified past in life. The North rewards the patient and the prepared. He was both, and it nearly worked. The identity remains open. The chase is the only biography we have, from a man who won't be known to a ship that won't go down. A steel ship drifts for decades with no hands on the wheel. That's the image sailors carry home from the Arctic. A dark hull sliding out of fog, rails iced over, nobody on deck, and no flag calling for help. In 1931, the trading vessel Baimo became locked in ice near Barrow, Alaska. The crew endured storms, watched the pack twist the hull, and moved ashore to a shelter when the pressure got worse. After a violent breakup and a brief release, the captain decided the ship was no longer safe. The company evacuated the men by air and sled. Baimo was written off as lost to the ice, but the ice had other plans, and the ship did not sink. She reappeared. Hunters and seafarers spotted her drifting along leads and pressure ridges. A few boarded and took stores. Others tried to secure lines, only to back away when the flows shifted and threatened to trap them. The ship looked workable from a distance, but every attempt to reclaim her hit the same wall: moving ice, short weather windows, and no tow strong enough in those conditions. So she floated on, year after year, turning up in places that proved the current had carried her far. Sightings ran into the 1960s. People reported Baimo off the Chukchi and Beaufort, then further east, then gone again. In 1969, a final account placed her struggling in the pack before bad weather closed in. No one reached her after that. Out here, the ice can hold a vessel for a season, release it into a clear lead, and then take it back under a new crust that forms overnight. The same shifting pack that crushed whalers preserved Baimo's hull long enough to make a legend. The record isn't rumor alone. Maritime logs noted coordinates and conditions. Inuit hunters described sightings with the kind of detail only working eyes give: the angle she sat, the ice around her, the state of the deck. Decades later, in 2006, the Alaskan government launched a project to locate the wreck. Crews reviewed reports and ran searches, but the sea kept quiet. No confirmed find. Two images hold the story together: frost-rimed railings, pale with hoar and sea spray, and a silent engine deep in the hull that never turned a screw again. You can stand on a winter beach and see both in your head. The ship is complete, but lifeless. The power is gone. The motion is all current and wind. Paper says where she was. The chart squares fill with dates and latitudes. Then the next storm rolls through and wipes the slate. Currents erase a trail faster than any investigator can draw it. The Arctic can mummify a body or crush a steel frame in a night. Baimo found the narrow path between those ends for almost 40 years. The last sighting fades. Most likely, she slipped under ice somewhere no one was watching, from a drifting ship to a village that drifted into rumor. A trapper rows in and sees a pot still warm, a fire tamped down neatly, and no one around to tend either. The shoreline looks lived in: racks, tools, and a kettle set aside like someone will be right back. The lake is quiet. The only sound is wind across the snow. In the 1930s, a fur trapper reported finding an Inuit camp near Anjukuni Lake completely deserted. He said houses stood open with supplies inside. He said the people were gone without tracks showing where they went. The story moved fast across trading posts and then into newspapers. It had the kind of details that stick: routine chores done, meals half finished, and a camp that felt paused instead of abandoned. Then the claims sharpened. Accounts began to say sled dogs were found starved, still tied, and that a grave nearby had been opened. The picture shifted from an orderly departure to something darker. Search parties went out and said they found nothing. No fresh trail, no sign of a fight, no bodies. The lake and the barrens kept quiet. As the tale spread, retelling started to bend facts. Dates slid forward or back. The size of the settlement grew or shrank depending on the paper. In one version, a bright light crossed the sky before the discovery, and in another, several lights hovered. A few articles turned the doused fire into one that still burned. The shape stayed the same, but the corners changed with each pass through an editor's desk. Skeptical writers later went looking for records. They found gaps. Royal Canadian Mounted Police documents from 1931 did not support the sensational version. The RCMP's dismissal of the story as fabricated in 1931, while providing a seemingly straightforward resolution, left many questions unanswered. The lack of definitive evidence and the subsequent closure of the case allowed the mystery to persist, fueling speculation and the growth of the legend. The unexplained lights, the abandoned dogs, and the disturbed grave all contributed to the enduring intrigue of the Anjukuni Lake disappearance. That official stance closed the file. It did not close the discussion. The half-eaten stew is the image that won't let go. It makes the camp feel lived in. It gives you a clock you can picture. Someone ate, stood up, and never sat back down. It is simple. It is domestic. It carries the weight of the whole myth because it says the people meant to return. Official files thin out right when you want them thick. A patrol note here, a typed memo there, and then silence. In that space, the story grows. People tell it to each other over winter evenings and add a detail that fits their sense of the North's strangeness. The rational path is plain enough. Seasonal moves are normal. Families shift camps in response to caribou, fish runs, or weather, and leave gear to return later. A migration explained by subsistence needs reads like a vanishing when pushed through a headline. Most likely this is folklore layered on a kernel of truth. A quiet camp, a missed path, and a rumor that hardened into print. From missing villagers to a creature that never signs a guest book. Footprints show up after a clean snowfall and stride into trees taller than church steeples. The steps are far apart, heel to toe like a person, but heavier, deeper, and heading upslope where most people don't go in winter. You follow the line until the prints vanish at a pile of wind-thrown branches, as if the walker stepped over the mess without breaking stride. For more than a century, people across British Columbia and Alberta have told the same kind of story. They see something big, thick through the shoulders, and quiet in a way that feels wrong for its size. They talk about a musky, sour smell that hits first. They describe long arms, a dome of hair on the head, and a glide to the walk that does not match a bear's waddle. Some reports happen near logging roads. Others come from high valleys with no cell service and no easy exit. Evidence keeps piling up without crossing the line into proof. Hair tufts land on fence wire or snag on bark, then go under a microscope and come back unidentified or cervid or bare. Plaster casts of tracks line garage shelves. They show toes, a wide forefoot, and sometimes a pressure ridge across the middle that should not be there if it's a standard human foot. DNA tests promise clarity, then return a non-answer or contamination or a match to common wildlife. The ground helps the legend and hurts the case. Remote forests swallow sound and make clean filming almost impossible. By the time a witness gets a phone out, the thing is gone, and all that's left is a shaky clip of trees and breath. Hoaxes muddy the pool. Some prints are carved. Some stories are lifted from old books and dropped onto new maps. Sorting honest mistakes from fraud burns time that should go to the few reports that hold together. Researchers study what they can touch. Dermal ridge patterns in casts are examined for flow and pores. Stride and step length are measured against slope and height. Environmental carrying capacity models ask whether a breeding population could hide in these ranges. The answers don't agree, but they don't rule it out either. One cast becomes the anchor. It shows a clear mid-tarsal break, a flexible zone across the foot that lets the heel rise while the toes stay planted. It looks different from a human arch and from a bear print doubled over itself. You can trace the line with a finger. If it's real, it points to an unknown primate. If it's not, it's a very good fake. The human record stacks high, thousands of sightings, maps with pins and folders of casts, while the land stays quiet. One specimen would end the argument in a second. Until that happens, the habitat does the hiding. These forests already tuck away black bears and cougars. It's not hard to believe they could hide something else. There's no proof, but the folklore map matches the wilderness gaps, from forests to hallways where footsteps keep going after the guests leave. An elevator door opens on an empty hallway. The lights hum. You step forward because a bellman in an old-style uniform gestures you in, and when you turn to thank him, he's gone. No tip, no footsteps, just the ding of the door closing. The Banff Springs Hotel has stood since 1888, carved into the slope with the Rockies pressed close. 2 stories dominate the place. The first is a bride who fell on her wedding day and never left the staircase. The second is a bellman who still helps guests, even though his shift ended long ago. Staff tell new hires the tales on day 1. Tourists hear them in the lounge and then go looking for the spots after dark. Reports pile up in simple, repeatable ways. Night staff hear steps on a floor they just cleared. Lights snap on in a room that should be empty. Doors open with no keycard heard. A housekeeper pushes a cart and sees a man ahead raise a hand, and then the hall is bare. Folklore pushes in, and guest accounts lean the same way because people keep having the same small moments that feel out of time. Certain rooms collect their own stories. A suite gets calls about cold drafts that start and stop at the same corner. A stair landing draws phones and nervous laughs because visitors say they feel watched there more than anywhere else. The bellman shows up in the same elevator bank and near the service corridor, moving like he has a job to do. The bride turns up near the grand staircase, head tilted, veil trailing. Patterns build because the reports repeat. The hotel keeps records and uses them. The archives hold notes on incidents, dates, and staff assignments. Long-term employees pass down what they saw and what others told them. Tours reference the legends, and tourism brochures nod to them. As one source put it, the hotel's embrace of its ghostly residents is a testament to the enduring power of these stories, a destination where the past and present, the living and the spectral, converge. It becomes part of the brand without turning it into a sideshow. That balance is why the stories keep their weight. One image anchors the bride, a scorched veil at the base of a staircase. People focus on the fabric and the burn marks because it gives a fixed point to a tale that moves. Even if you doubt the rest, that small detail tugs you back to the steps. Security can log a door time, a manager can write up a shift note, but you can't schedule a ghost for camera. Clips show empty halls and an exit sign. The Rockies press against the windows and add a bigger silence to the rooms, like something beyond the walls watches the watchers. The stories endure. Guests leave with more than photos and receipts. They leave with a hallway they won't forget. From hotel corridors to base testing grounds with files redacted. In the 1960s, crews sprayed deep green forest around CFB Gagetown, then left. 30 years later, people who had lived and worked there began trading doctor notes. Cancers, rashes that never cleared, nerve pain that came and went like the weather. A cluster map formed on kitchen tables long before any official chart did. The setup is blunt. The base tested defoliants to thin brush and exposed training grounds. Records name Agent Orange among them, along with other herbicides blended to strip leaves fast. Helicopters and trucks moved in grids. Spray drift rode the wind into wetlands, woodlots, and backyards at the fence line. Soldiers trained in it. Civilians cut firewood and picked berries in it. Then the tension started. Ottawa admitted to some testing, some dates, some barrels. Veterans and locals pointed to years, not weeks. They showed service records, posted photos of spray lines on trees, and kept listing diagnoses that matched each other a little too well. Partial admissions ran headfirst into patterns of disease that looked anything but partial. Compensation came late and with conditions. Frameworks offered payments if you fit a narrow window of exposure. Many did not. Widows applied with second-hand proof and got rejected on technicalities. People argued over whether the spray period was a few weeks in 1966 to 67 or a longer run reaching through the decade. Scope and duration stayed under dispute while families kept paperwork in plastic tubs under beds. When files finally opened, they changed the shape of the argument without ending it. Declassified timelines showed test dates, product names, and application methods. Contractor logs listed acreages, nozzle types, and weather notes that hinted at drift days. Epidemiological studies compared base populations to provincial averages and found bumps in certain cancers and autoimmune issues, but not always enough to hit statistical certainty. The numbers spoke in cautious language. The town hall meetings did not. One folder puts a face on it. A veteran's medical file, thick with referrals and repeat diagnoses, shows a spine scan, a biopsy result, a list of meds that keeps getting longer. He marked spray dates on a calendar years ago. He kept the calendar. When he sits with a claims officer, he lays out service records beside appointment slips. He is organized. He still hears insufficient evidence. That is the grind of this story. Chemicals break down. They move through soil and water. Proof trails thin out just as the symptoms build up. You can't dig a jar of contaminated dirt out of 1966 and put it on a table in 1996. The land edits fast. Families built their own maps anyway. They trace spray zones against streets and schools. Pins on those homemade charts lined up with the names they knew. The overlap was small enough to fit in a binder and large enough to hurt. There was a payoff of sorts. The government acknowledged some testing and paid some claims. But files remain sealed or incomplete, and many people still sit outside the framework. From hidden toxins in the woods to a glowing object sinking off a fishing town. Dozens of people on Nova Scotia's South Shore watch a glowing object cross the night sky and drop into the Atlantic. Boats race out. RCMP set up on the bluff. Divers go in at first light. The spot is clear on everyone's map. The ocean answers with nothing. It is October 1967 near Shag Harbor. Fishermen think they are seeing a small aircraft in trouble. Some report a low hiss and lights that blink out as the thing hits the water. Constables arrive within minutes and mark a position a short distance offshore. The Coast Guard and local boats form a line and search for survivors. The scene looks like a rescue, not a mystery. Then the checklist breaks. No mayday, no nameplate. No one in the water calling back. Through the night and into the next day, the search stays focused. They expect to find wreckage, an oil slick, something to prove a crash. Nothing turns up. Every airfield is checked. No missing aircraft match the time and location. The Navy brings in divers and a sweep plan. They grid the bottom where witnesses pointed. The seabed is clean. No fuselage, no seat foam, no debris field to follow. The paperwork builds fast. RCMP reports document times, names, positions, and weather. Government memos label it as a UFO report in the normal sense of the term. Unidentified, still flying until it didn't. Units coordinate with Ottawa. U.S. interest follows, not in headlines but in quiet calls and observers taking notes at the shoreline. The official file grows tidy while the water stays blank. Prior to the splashdown, other sightings feed the case. The pilots of Air Canada Flight 305, Captain Pierre Charbonneau and First Officer Robert Ralph, report a brilliantly lit, rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing it. They also note 2 explosions near the object. A family on shore, Daryl Dory, his sister KK, and their mother, watch a large object maneuver above the southwestern horizon. The crew of the MV Nickerson report 4 bright objects in a roughly rectangular formation on their radar. That spread of eyes, on the ground, in the air, and at sea, gives the timeline a backbone. On the surface at Shag Harbor, one detail becomes the anchor image. Searchers describe a slick of yellow foam floating on black water where the object went down. It stretches in a rough band and drifts with the tide. It is not fuel. It is not a normal spill from a known craft. Crews collect what they can. Lab work never ties it to a source that ends the debate. Academic reviews later pull the threads together. The Condon Committee files, along with the RCMP reports and local interviews, align on the key points. A witnessed descent, a marked impact area, coordinated searches, and no recovery. The human record is solid. The seabed is silent. Ideas try to fill the gap. Secret aircraft, a re-entry fragment, a meteor skipping then sinking. None fit all the witnesses and the timeline. The best documented Canadian UFO splashdown stays a question mark. The Atlantic closes over the last evidence. The files keep talking, but the land edits faster. Ice seals scenes. Distance spreads them thin. Water lifts debris out to sea. Time scrapes labels off names. Even with open cases in the thousands, investigators still chase shadows across terrain that refuses clean lines. If you know these places, share what the map can't. Local archives, family stories, missing threads, send them. Small details close gaps that satellites miss. As one explorer said, the world in which we live is a world of mystery, and the greatest mysteries are those that are closest to us. Out here, answers freeze, sink, or drift just out of reach, and that's 20. 20 stories where the trail fades and the land keeps the rest. The Arctic ice, the empty roads, the quiet lakes. They don't solve these cases. They just wait for the next ones. If you made it this far, you're exactly who this channel is for. So go ahead, subscribe, and join the ones who stay up late chasing what the world forgot. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, because the land isn't done confessing yet.